The fluorescent lights of Bridgewater High's main corridor flickered as 17-year-old cheerleader Sloan Merrick's uniform top split apart with a vicious tearth sound, echoing off metal lockers like a gunshot. 3 senior football players stood behind her, their laughter booming through the hallway as she clutched the shredded fabric to her chest, her Valentine's Day rejections still fresh on their phones. What they didn't know was that Sloane's father had spent 15 years teaching her Krav Maga in their garage, and the security cameras they thought were broken had been secretly fixed by the computer science club just yesterday. In exactly 7 seconds, Bridgewater High would witness its most explosive takedown, and it would all be caught in crystal-clear 4K resolution. Before we dive into Skylar's story, I just want to take a quick moment to say thank you for being here. I know stories like these can be tough to hear, but they're also incredibly important because somewhere out there, someone might be facing their own hallway moment, feeling trapped and alone. Your support helps these stories reach the people who need to hear them most, who need to know they're not crazy, they're not overreacting, and they're definitely not alone. If this story resonates with you or helps you in any way, please consider hitting the like button and sharing your thoughts in the comments. Your experiences and insights create a community where we all learn from each other. And if you'd like to help me continue sharing these stories, there's a small thanks button below this video where you can show your support. Planks.coms, .com6.com6.coms. The morning had started like any other Tuesday at Bridgewater High School in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Sloan arrived at 7:30 a.m. sharp, her blonde ponytail bouncing as she navigated the crowded hallways toward her locker. The red and white cheerleading uniform she wore represented more than just school. Spirit it was her armor, earned through countless hours of practice and a full scholarship that would take her to State University next fall. Morning. Sloan. Her best friend Kendall waved from across the hall, holding a stack of pink envelopes. Ready for V-Day madness? Sloan forced a smile, though her stomach churned. Valentine's Day at Bridgewater operated like a social hierarchy stress test. Who got roses delivered to homeroom, whose lockers overflowed with cards, and, most importantly, who scored invites to the exclusive after-school party at Mason Rutherford's mansion. The first warning sign came during second period chemistry. 3 folded notes landed on her desk in quick succession, each bearing the same aggressive scrawl she recognized from football plays posted on the team bulletin board. She didn't need to open them to know who they were from. Chase Donovan, the quarterback with an ego bigger than his passing stats. Tyler Banks, whose father owned half the commercial real estate in Cedar Rapids. And Garrett Liu, the defensive linebacker, who thought his Division II recruitment letter gave him diplomatic immunity from consequences. She slipped the notes into her backpack unopened, focusing instead on balancing chemical equations. But whispers rippled through the classroom like wildfire. Did you see Chase's note? $20 says she says yes to at least one. My cousin dated Tyler last year. Total nightmare. By lunch, the situation had escalated. Sloan sat with her usual crew in the cafeteria's northeast corner, picking at a turkey sandwich, while Kendall and their friend Marcus debated whether the school's new zero-tolerance bullying policy actually had teeth. It's all for show, Marcus insisted, adjusting his glasses. Remember when those seniors cornered Jamie Peterson in the bathroom? 2-day suspension? That's it. Because Jamie's parents didn't push it. Kendall countered. If someone actually, a shadow fell across their table. Chase Donovan loomed above them, flanked by Tyler and Garrett. The cafeteria's ambient noise dropped several decibels as heads turned to watch. Sloan. Chase's voice carried the practiced confidence of someone who'd never heard no and lived to tell about it. Got my note? She looked up, meeting his gaze steadily. I did. And I'm not interested. Chase. Sorry. His jaw tightened. Tula stepped forward, planting both hands on the table. Come on. Don't be like that. You know how many girls would kill for can't. Then ask them. Sloane's voice remained calm, but her grip on her water bottle tightened. I said no. Garrett laughed, a harsh sound that made several nearby freshmen flinch. Playing hard to get? That's cute. There's no playing involved. She stood, gathering her tray. The answer is no. To all three of you, have a nice Valentine's Day. She walked away, Kendall and Marcus scrambling to follow. Behind them, she heard Chase mutter something that made Tyler and Garrett laugh, the kind of laugh that promised this wasn't over. The rest of the afternoon passed in tense increments. Sloane caught glimpses of the trio everywhere, lurking by her locker between classes, sitting in the back row during her AP history presentation, even showing up at cheerleading practice to watch the routine. Coach Martinez noticed immediately, "Donovan, Banks, Lou, this is a closed practice. Out." They left, but not before Chase called out, "See you later." Sloane, count on it. By 3:45 p.m., most students had cleared out for Valentine's activities. Sloane stayed behind to help Kendall organize decorations for Friday's pep rally, stacking boxes of streamers in the supply closet near the gym. The hallways echoed with that peculiar emptiness, unique to after-school hours, a hollow quiet that amplified every footstep. "I'll grab the last box from my car," Kendall said, checking her phone. "Back in 5. Sloane nodded, continuing to sort red and white pom-poms by size. The supply closet smelled like old rubber and industrial cleaner, lit by a single bulb that cast harsh shadows. She hummed along to the music playing from her phone, trying to shake the unease that had settled in her chest since lunch. The door slammed shut. She spun around to find Chase blocking the exit, Tyler and Garrett flanking him like wingmen from hell. The single bulb threw their features into sharp relief. Chase's perpetual smirk, Tyler's cold eyes, Garrett's clenched fists. "Funny thing about rejection," Chase said, stepping forward. "I don't really do well with it." Sloane's hand moved instinctively toward her phone, but Tyler was faster, knocking it from her grip. It skittered across the concrete floor, the music cutting off abruptly. "3 chances," Garrett said, cracking his knuckles. "You had 3 chances to say yes, and I said no 3 times. Sloane kept her voice steady despite her racing heart. "That's not going to change because you cornered me in a closet." Chase's smirk widened. "See? That's where you're wrong. Because here's what's going to happen. You're going to apologize for embarrassing us in front of half the school. You're going to agree to go to Mason's party with me, and you're going to smile while you do it. Or what?" The words hung in the air like a challenge. Chase's expression darkened, and for the first time, Sloane saw past the quarterback swagger to something uglier underneath, the kind of entitlement that came from a lifetime of getting everything he wanted. "Or we make the rest of your senior year very, very difficult." He moved closer, close enough that she could smell his expensive cologne mixed with football sweat. "Starting with that pretty uniform you're so proud of." Before Sloane could react, Garrett grabbed her arms from behind, pinning them. Tyler laughed, that same harsh sound from the cafeteria, as Chase reached for the collar of her cheerleading top. "Don't!" The word came out as a gasp as he yanked hard, the fabric splitting with a sound like tearing paper. The rip ran from collar to mid-chest, exposing her sports bra underneath. Cool air hit her skin, and fury white hot and pure flooded her system. "Oops," Chase said, stepping back to admire his handiwork. "Looks like you'll need a new uniform. Maybe next time you'll think twice before." He never finished the sentence. Sloane's father had started teaching her Krav Maga when she was 7, right after a boy at elementary school had pushed her off the swings. "It's not about being stronger," he'd explained, demonstrating moves in their garage as her mother looked on with concern. "It's about being smarter, faster, and knowing that in a real fight, there are no rules." 10 years of training crystallized into a single moment of clarity. She drove her heel down hard on Garrett's instep, feeling the small bones crunch. His grip loosened as he howled, and she spun, bringing her elbow up into his solar plexus. He doubled over, gasping, and she grabbed his shoulder for leverage as she brought her knee up into his face. Blood exploded from his nose as he crumpled. Tyler lunged forward, but she was already moving. She grabbed the metal mop bucket from the corner, swinging it in a wide arc that caught him in the temple. The clang echoed through the closet as he staggered sideways, dazed. That left Chase. He stood frozen, his smirk finally gone, replaced by something that might have been fear. "You crazy, bitch," Sloane finished for him, squaring her stance. "Yeah, I've heard that before. Usually from guys who can't handle the word no." He rushed her, counting on his 100-pound weight advantage, but weight meant nothing if you couldn't use it. She sidestepped at the last second, grabbing his wrist and using his momentum against him. Her hip checked his as she pulled, sending him flying in a textbook judo throw her father would have been proud of. Chase hit the ground hard, the breath exploding from his lungs. She planted her foot on his chest, pressing just hard enough to keep him down. "Here's what's actually going to happen," she said, her voice deadly calm, despite the adrenaline singing through her veins. "You're going to leave me alone. All three of you. No more notes. No more cornering me. No more anything. Because if you don't," she leaned down slightly, making sure he could see her eyes, "next time I won't stop at just putting you on your ass." A sound from the doorway made her look up. Kendall stood there, mouth open, phone in hand. But she wasn't alone. Behind her stood half the computer science club, their phones all raised and recording. At the front of the group was Jamie Peterson, the same Jamie who'd been cornered in the bathroom last year, whose complaints had been brushed aside with a 2-day suspension for the perpetrators. "We fixed the security cameras last week," Jamie said quietly. "All of them, including the one in here." They gestured to the corner where a small camera blinked red. "We've got everything. The assault, the torn uniform, all of it." Chase tried to sit up, but Sloane's foot kept him pinned. "You set us up?" "No," Kendall said, finding her voice. "We just made sure that this time, when someone reported assault and battery, there'd be proof that couldn't be ignored or deleted." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Someone, probably Jamie, had already called the police. Sloane finally stepped back, allowing Chase to scramble away from her. He joined Tyler, who was holding his head, and Garrett, who was trying to stem the flow of blood from his nose with his football jersey. "This isn't over." Chase spat, but the words lacked conviction. "Hard to be intimidating when you were bleeding and about to be arrested." "Yes," Sloane said, pulling her torn uniform closed as best she could. "It is." The next 20 minutes passed in a blur of flashing lights and official statements. Officer Dana Reeves, a Bridgewater alum who dealt with her share of entitled athletes, took one look at the security footage and called for backup to process the scene properly. The Computer Science Club's recordings were backed up to 3 different cloud services before anyone could think to demand their deletion. Principal Morrison arrived as the 3 boys were being led out in handcuffs. His face cycling through shades of purple Sloane had only seen in her chemistry textbook. He started to speak, probably to do damage control, to minimize what would surely be a public relations nightmare, but Officer Reeves cut him off. "Sir, we'll need to discuss why these students felt comfortable assaulting a female student on school property, and why previous incidents," she glanced meaningfully at Jamie, "weren't properly addressed." As the chaos swirled around her, Sloane found herself sitting on the gym steps, Kendall's jacket draped over her ruined uniform. Her hands shook slightly, adrenaline crash, her father would say, but she felt strangely calm. "That was incredible," Marcus said, sitting down beside her. "I mean, terrifying, but incredible. Where did you learn to fight like that?" "My dad. He always said I should be able to defend myself." She paused, watching as the police cars pulled away. "I just never thought I'd have to. Not here. Not like this." Jamie approached hesitantly, clutching their laptop. "The videos are already going viral. Hashtag Bridgewater Assault is trending locally. People are sharing their own stories, calling for the school board to actually do something." Sloane nodded, too exhausted to fully process the implications. In the distance, she could see news vans pulling into the parking lot, drawn by the promise of a scandal in an otherwise quiet Iowa town. Her phone, miraculously unbroken, despite being knocked across the floor, buzzed with incoming messages. Her parents, already on their way. Her older sister from college, who'd somehow already seen the video, Coach Martinez, promising that new uniforms were the least of what the school owed her. But one message stood out. Saw what happened. You're the bravest person I know. If you need any lawyer, someone to talk to, or just pizza and bad movies, I'm here. Daniel Park. Daniel, the quiet kid from her calculus class, who'd been leaving origami flowers in her locker all week, who'd written her a Valentine that morning, a genuine one. Not the aggressive demands she'd received from Chase and his crew that she'd been too frazzled to properly respond to. She was about to reply when Kendall nudged her. Heads up, Morrison's coming this way. And he's got that look. Indeed, Principal Morrison was approaching, his administrative smile plastered on despite the circumstances. Behind him trailed two school board members, Sloan recognized from last year's budget meeting, the ones who'd voted against funding additional security measures. Miss Merrick, Morrison began, his tone suggesting he was about to propose something thoroughly insulting disguised as reasonable. Perhaps we could discuss this situation in my office. I'm sure we can come to an understanding that, actually, a new voice interrupted. Miss Merrick won't be discussing anything without legal representation present. Everyone turned to see a woman in a sharp business suit striding toward them, her heels clicking authoritatively on the concrete. She looked to be in her 40s, with steel gray hair and eyes that promised she ate school administrators for breakfast. Rebecca Chen, she said, handing Sloan a business card. Civil rights attorney, Jamie Peterson's older sister. She turned her laser focus on Morrison. I understand my client was assaulted on school property by 3 students with a documented history of harassment that your administration failed to address. Would you like to discuss your school's liability here, in front of the news crews? Or shall we schedule a formal meeting? Morrison's mouth opened and closed like a fish. The school board members behind him seemed to be calculating exactly how much this was going to cost them in legal fees and settlements. That is, Miss Merrick hasn't retained counsel, pro bono, Rebecca said smoothly. Given the circumstances and video evidence, I suspect we'll have no shortage of support from women's rights organizations. Did you know Title IX requires schools to address sexual harassment and assault? Fascinating how many administrators seem to forget that. As the adults squared off, Sloan felt her phone buzz again. This time it was a video link from someone she didn't recognize. Against her better judgment, she clicked it. The video showed the school parking lot, time-stamped from 30 minutes ago before the attack. Chase's truck was parked in its usual spot, and he was talking to someone just out of frame. The audio was faint but audible. Teach her a lesson she won't forget. Stuck-up bitch thinks she's too good for us? We'll see how she feels when that pretty uniform gets ruined. The other voice was harder to make out, but Sloan's blood ran cold as she recognized it. It was Mason Rutherford, host of the exclusive Valentine's Party, son of the school board president. Just don't leave marks that show, Mason said. My dad can only cover so much. But yeah, she needs to learn her place. Girls like that always do. The video ended. A message appeared below it. Thought you should see this. There's more where that came from. A friend who's tired of staying silent. Sloan looked up from her phone to find Rebecca Chen watching her with sharp eyes. Without a word, she handed over the device. The attorney's expression grew grimmer as she watched. Well, Rebecca said quietly, this just became much bigger than 3 entitled boys in a torn uniform. She looked at Principal Morrison, who seemed to have shrunk several inches. I believe we'll be adding conspiracy and potentially hate crime charges to our discussion. Mason Rutherford. That would be Board President Rutherford's son, correct? The news crews were setting up now, reporters practicing their opening lines. Sloan could already imagine the headlines. Cheerleader fights back against assault. Video evidence exposes culture of harassment at Iowa high school. How many more were silenced? But all of that, the media circus, The legal battles, the inevitable backlash would come later. Right now, sitting on the gym steps with her friends around her and justice finally within reach, Sloane felt something she hadn't experienced in the suffocating atmosphere of Bridgewater High's social hierarchy. Power. Not the kind that came from money, or athletic prowess or family connections. Real power. The kind that came from standing up and saying no more and having the strength to back it up. Her phone buzzed one more time. Daniel again. Saw the news, Vans. If you need an escape route, I've got my car by the theater entrance. Also, my sister says you're her new hero. This time, she smiled as she typed back, rain check on those bad movies? Something tells me tonight's going to be complicated. Every night after this is going to be complicated. Kendall said, reading over her shoulder. You just took down Chase Donovan. And probably Mason Rutherford. Maybe half the football team when this all comes out. Sloane stood from, adjusting Kendall's jacket around her shoulders. In the parking lot, she could see more cars arriving. Parents, lovers, probably school board members doing damage control. Tomorrow, Bridgewater High would be ground zero for a conversation about consent, power, and accountability that was long overdue. But that was tomorrow. Tonight, she had a police statement to finish, a uniform to replace, and a Valentine's Day that had gone about as far from romantic as possible, although, she thought as she spotted Daniel's beat-up Honda by the theater entrance, maybe the night wasn't a total loss. Sometimes the best relationships started not with grand gestures or aggressive pursuits, but with quiet support and origami flowers, with someone who offered escape routes and bad movies instead of demands and threats. Ready? Officer Reeves asked. Approaching with her notepad, Sloane took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders the way she did before a difficult cheerleading routine. Except this time, she wasn't performing for judges or crowds. This time, she was standing up for herself and every other girl who'd been cornered, threatened, or silenced. Ready? She said, and followed Officer Reeves toward the police cruiser, leaving the torn pieces of her uniform and her silence behind on the gym steps. The revolution at Bridgewater High had begun with a ripped shirt and a well-placed kick, but as the news crews rolled and the hashtags spread and the whispers turned to roars, one thing became crystal clear. This is not the end. Principal Morrison's office smelled like stale coffee and disappointment, a combination Skylar had become familiar with over her 3 years at Westbrook High. But she'd never been here as a victim before. The leather chair creaked as she shifted. Coach Patterson's jacket still wrapped around her torn uniform like armor made of windbreaker material. Miss Bennett, Principal Morrison began, his fingers steepled in front of him. I've seen the video. Which one? Skylar asked, her voice sharper than intended. Morrison's eyebrows rose. There's more than one? Connor Walsh filmed the entire assault. There's another video circulating that only shows me defending myself. She pulled out her phone, showing him the Snapchat story that now had over 500 views. This one makes it look like I attacked Brett, unprovoked. The principal's frown deepened as he watched. I see. And the full video shows 3 football players cornering me in an empty hallway, pinning my arms, and ripping my cheerleading uniform while filming it. Skylar's voice cracked slightly on the last word, betraying the emotions she'd been holding back. It shows Brett Garrison assaulting me because I rejected him publicly. Morrison was quiet for a long moment, his face unreadable. Outside his office window, the storm that had been building finally broke. Rain lashing against the glass, like nature itself was angry. This is a serious accusation, he finally said. It's not an accusation, Skylar shot back. It's documented fact. Coach Patterson has Connor's phone. The evidence is right there. Yes. Well, Morrison shifted uncomfortably. Brett Garrison's father is on the school board. His family has donated significant funds to our athletic program. I'm not saying that influences anything, but it does. Skylar stood abruptly, anger overtaking her fear. You're sitting here trying to figure out how to make this go away without upsetting the Garrisons. Meanwhile, I'm sitting here in a torn uniform after being assaulted in your school. Sit down, Miss Bennett. Morrison's tone hardened. No one is trying to make anything go away, but we need to consider all angles. Brett is claiming you attacked him without provocation. He says the uniform incident was just horseplay that you're blowing out of proportion. Horseplay? Skylar laughed bitterly. 3 guys cornering a girl and ripping her clothes is horseplay? That's his version of events. Then look at the full video. Morrison sighed. I will. But I need you to understand that even with video evidence, these situations are complicated. Brett is facing potential scholarship losses if this escalates. His future? What about my future? Skylar interrupted. What about my safety? My dignity? Or does that matter less than his football career? Before Morrison could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at the caller ID, and his face paled. I need to take this. Wait outside. Skylar found herself back in the uncomfortable plastic chair. But now she wasn't alone. The news had spread, and the hallway outside the principal's office was filling with people. Madison was there. Along with half the cheerleading squad, several teachers had emerged from their classrooms. Even some parents had arrived. Though Skylar's mom was still at work at the hospital and wouldn't get off until 6 p.m. Sky! Madison rushed over. What happened? The video. Which video? Skylar asked tiredly. The one where you're attacking Brett. It's everywhere. People are saying, there's another video. Skylar said loudly enough for everyone to hear. The full one? It shows what really happened. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Phones appeared. Texts flew. The digital battlefield was expanding by the second. The office door opened and Brett emerged. Still walking gingerly. Flanked by his father, a man who looked like an older, meaner version of his son. Richard Garrison's suit probably cost more than Skylar's mom made in a month. This is outrageous. Mr. Garrison was saying to Principal Morrison, that girl assaulted my son. We have video proof. I want her expelled and criminal charges filed. Mr. Garrison, Morrison began. But Brett's father steamrolled over him. Do you have any idea what this could do to Brett's recruitment? Miami is sending scouts next week. If word gets out that some girl attacked him, some girl? Skylar stood. Coach Patterson's jacket falling open to reveal her destroyed uniform. Your son and his friends cornered me, held me down, and ripped my clothes off. That's sexual assault. The hallway went dead silent. Richard Garrison's face went through several shades of red. How dare you? The full video shows everything. Skylar continued, her voice carrying clearly. Your son assaulted me because I said no to him. Because I embarrassed him. Because he thinks he's entitled to any girl he wants. Lying bitch, Brett muttered. That's when Madison stepped forward, her phone in hand. Actually, she's not. Everyone turned to stare at her. I've been documenting Brett's harassment all year, Madison announced. Screenshots of texts he sent to girls who rejected him. Recordings of him bragging about putting girls in their place. Videos of him and his friends cornering girls in hallways just like today. She held up her phone, scrolling through file after file. 17 different girls. Principal Morrison. 17 girls who were too scared to come forward because they knew nothing would happen. Because Brett Garrison is untouchable, that's illegal, Richard Garrison sputtered. Recording without consent is perfectly legal in school hallways with no expectation of privacy, said a new voice. Everyone turned to see Miss Rodriguez, the AP government teacher, stepping forward. I've been advising Miss Chen on her documentation project for her civics grade. Everything was done by the book. The crowd was growing. Students pulled out phones. Not to record, but to share. Stories began flooding social media, girls describing their own encounters with Brett and his crew, their own moments of fear and humiliation. The hashtag number 17 girls began trending within minutes. This is a witch hunt. Richard Garrison's voice rose to near hysteria. My son is being railroaded by jealous girls who... He was cut off by the arrival of 2 uniformed police officers. We received a call about an assault, the older officer said, looking around the crowded hallway. Principal Morrison? Officers? Morrison looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Perhaps we should discuss this in my office. No, Skylar said firmly. We discuss it here. In front of everyone. No more closed doors. No more secrets. The younger officer noticed her torn uniform. "Miss, do you need medical attention?" "I need justice." Skylar replied, "There's a video on Connor Walsh's phone showing 3 students assaulting me. I want to file charges." "This is ridiculous." Richard Garrison moved towards Skylar aggressively, but the older officer stepped between them. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step back." What happened next would be debated in Westbrook High hallways for years to come. Brett, perhaps emboldened by his father's presence or desperate to maintain his crumbling image, made a fatal error. He lunged toward Madison, trying to grab her phone with all the evidence. Skylar moved without thinking. Years of cheerleading had given her flexibility, strength, and perfect body control. Her legs swept up in a flawless arc, her foot connecting with Brett's chest in a textbook defensive kick that would have made her self-defense instructor proud. But this wasn't the controlled environment of a gym. This was a crowded hallway with a wet floor from tracked-in rain. Brett flew backward with far more force than anyone expected, his feet leaving the ground entirely. He sailed through the air for what seemed like an impossible distance before crashing into the trophy case 15 feet away. The glass shattered spectacularly. Trophies, many of them Brett's own football achievements, rained down on him as he crumpled to the floor amid the glittering shards. The sound was tremendous. Like every victory Westbrook High had ever achieved was crashing down at once. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then Connor, loyal to the end, raised his phone and said, "I got that on video too." The spell broke. The police rushed forward, the crowd erupted, and in the chaos, Tyler Reeves tried to run. He made it approximately 10 feet before Madison stuck out her foot and sent him sprawling. As he fell, his phone skittered across the floor, unlocking to reveal a group chat called Brett's Bitches, filled with photos of girls taken without their knowledge, ratings of their bodies, and plans for teaching them lessons. The younger officer picked up the phone, his expression darkening as he scrolled, "This is evidence of conspiracy to commit assault, harassment, and potentially stalking." He looked at Tyler, who was still on the floor. "You have the right to remain silent." "Wait!" Richard Garrison's bravado finally cracked. "Officers, surely we can discuss this. Your son just attempted to assault another student in front of law enforcement," the older officer said, "after allegedly committing sexual assault, and now we have evidence of an ongoing pattern of harassment. Sir, your son is under arrest." As Brett was helped to his feet, bleeding from several cuts from the trophy case glass, he looked at Skylar with pure hatred. "You've ruined everything." "No," Skylar said quietly. "You ruined everything the moment you decided my no didn't matter." The next hour was a blur of statements, evidence collection, and phone calls. Skylar's mother arrived like an avenging angel in scrubs, taking one look at her daughter's torn uniform before unleashing a verbal assault on Principal Morrison that had him physically backing away. "You let this happen in your school?" Dr. Bennett said, her voice deadly calm. "You created an environment where boys like Brett Garrison think they can assault girls without consequences, and when my daughter defended herself, you tried to find a way to minimize it." Dr. Bennett, "I assure you, save it for the lawsuit," she snapped. "And yes, there will be a lawsuit against the school, against the Garrisons, against anyone who enabled this toxic culture." Meanwhile, the digital storm had become a hurricane. The full video from Connor's phone had been released by the police as part of their investigation, and news outlets were picking up the story. Cheerleader fights back against assault, competed with football stars fall from grace for headlines. But it was the students of Westbrook High who really drove the change. By 8 p.m. that night, a makeshift memorial had appeared at the shattered trophy casinat for Brett's achievements, but for all the girls who'd been silenced, 17 roses, one for each of Madison's documented victims, notes of support, pictures of bruises that had been hidden, stories that had been suppressed. Skylar sat on her front porch, wrapped in a blanket, and watching the storm pass. Her phone hadn't stopped buzzing for hours. Reporters wanted statements, lawyers wanted to represent her. Girls from other schools were sharing their own stories. Madison sat beside her, scrolling through her phone. Brett's already been kicked off the team. Tyler and Connor too. Their scholarships are gone. Good, Skylar said, then felt a twinge of something. Not guilt. Exactly. But sadness for the waste of it all. They did it to themselves. You know what the best part is? Madison showed her a screenshot. The Valentine's court crown? They're giving it to you? For outstanding bravery in the face of adversity? Skylar laughed. The sound slightly hysterical. I knee a guy in the groin and kick him through a trophy case. And they want to give me a crown? You stood up to 3 attackers? You exposed a culture of harassment? You gave 17 girls probably more a voice. Madison squeezed her hand. That's queen behavior if I've ever seen it. A car pulled up to the curb, and Coach Patterson got out. Carrying a box. Skylar, he said, approaching the porch. I wanted to return these. They're from your locker. He handed her the box of Valentine's cards she'd never opened. Skylar stared at them for a moment, then made a decision. Help me burn them? With pleasure, Madison said. They built a small fire in the metal trash can in the backyard, feeding the cards into it one by one. Each declaration of unwanted affection turned to ash and smoke, drifting away on the wind. Wet, Madison said, holding up one envelope. This one's different. It was smaller than the others. The handwriting careful and precise. Skylar opened it cautiously. Dear Skylar, she read aloud, I know you get a lot of these, and I know they probably make you uncomfortable. I'm not writing to ask you out or tell you how beautiful you are. I'm writing to tell you that I see how hard you work not just at cheerleading, but at being kind even when people don't deserve it. I see how you stand up for younger students. I see how you refuse to let anyone define you. That takes real strength. Happy Valentine's Day. From someone who admires your character more than your uniform. Alex? Who's Alex? Madison asked. Skylar thought about it. Alex Morrison was in her AP chemistry class, quiet, studious, always willing to help other students, but never seeking attention. They'd been lab partners once and had worked together perfectly. No awkwardness or unwanted advances. Just mutual respect and shared focus on not blowing up the lab. Someone who might actually be worth knowing, Skylar said, carefully folding the note and putting it in her pocket. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. She almost ignored it. Then saw the preview. This is Alex Morrison. I hope you're okay. If you need notes from chemistry or just someone to talk to who won't make this about them, I'm here. For the first time since the hallway, Skylar felt herself truly smile. The next morning, Westbrook High was transformed. News vans crowded the parking lot. Students wore homemade shirts with slogans like 17 too many and no means no. The shattered trophy case had been boarded up, but someone had already started a petition to replace it with a memorial to survivors of harassment. Skylar walked through the front doors in jeans, and a simple t-shirt uniform was evidence now. The hallway where it happened had been deep cleaned, but she could still see it in her mind. Brett's face, the tearing fabric. The moment she decided to fight back, Skylar? Principal Morrison appeared at her elbow. Could I speak with you for a moment? She followed him to his office, where a woman in a sharp suit was waiting. This is Dr. Wayne. Patricia Hawkins. Morrison said, the school board has appointed her as special investigator for systemic harassment issues at Westbrook. Dr. Hawkins stood, offering her hand. Miss Bennett, I've reviewed all the evidence, including Miss Chen's documentation project. I want you to know that changes are coming. Real changes. Such as? Skylar asked. Mandatory consent and harassment training for all students. A complete review of our athletic program's culture, an anonymous reporting system for harassment, and, she glanced at Morrison, administrative changes to ensure complaints are properly handled. Morrison's face tightened, but he nodded. Message received. His job was on the line. We'd like you to be part of the Student Advisory Committee. Dr. Hawkins continued, "Your voice and the voices of the other affected students need to be heard." Skylar thought about it. Part of her wanted to say no, to put this all behind her and try to salvage what was left of her senior year. But then she thought about the 17 roses at the trophy case, about all the girls who'd been too scared to speak up, about the next Brett Garrison who might think twice now. "I'll do it," she said. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. The legal proceedings moved forward. Brett, Connor, and Tyler all faced criminal charges. The civil lawsuit against the school district prompted policy changes across the state. Skylar testified before the school board, her voice steady as she recounted not just her assault, but the culture that enabled it. The cheerleading squad rallied around her, creating a new routine for the state championship that incorporated self-defense moves. They performed it in modified uniform zones that couldn't be torn, with built-in protection. They won first place. Brett Garrison's football career was over. His father tried to salvage it with expensive lawyers and PR firms, but the video was damning. The group chat messages were worse. And when more girls came forward, not just from Westbrook but from Brett's previous school, the Garrison empire crumbled. On a warm April evening, Skylar stood in the gym preparing for prom. She wore a dress that was both beautiful and practical. You could throw a high kick in it if needed, a feature she'd specifically requested from the designer. "You ready?" Alex Morrison appeared in the doorway, looking slightly uncomfortable in formal wear, but smiling genuinely. They'd been studying together since February, initially just chemistry, but gradually expanding to include actual conversations. Alex had never once commented on the assault, the videos, or the media attention, unless Skylar brought it up first. Instead, they talked about college plans, scientific theories, and surprisingly heated debates about Star Wars. "Almost," Skylar said, then impulsively hugged him. "Thank you." "For what?" "For seeing me as more than a cheerleader or a victim or a symbol. For just seeing me." Alex's smile widened. "That's easy. You're kind of hard to miss when you're kicking people through trophy cases." She laughed. "That was one time. It was legendary. Though, Physics Club is still trying to calculate the force required." As they walked toward the gym, where music was already spilling out into the night, Skylar felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Normalcy. Not the old normal, where harassment was ignored and power protected predators, but a new normal. One where speaking up was encouraged, where defenders were celebrated, where a cheerleader could kick a quarterback across a hallway and become a hero instead of a villain. The gym was decorated in silver and blue, stars hanging from every surface. The DJ wisely was not playing any slow songs about unrequited love or persistent pursuit. The playlist had been carefully vetted by the Student Advisory Committee. "One thing," Alex said as they approached the doors, "I can't actually dance." "That's okay," Skylar grinned. "I can teach you. And if anyone gives us trouble, you'll kick them into next week?" "I was going to say I'll report them through proper channels," Skylar said primly. "But yeah, kicking remains an option." They entered the gym together, ready to dance badly and laugh often. Behind them, the trophy case had been rebuilt, but now it held something different. Alongside the athletic achievements were photos and stories of students who'd shown real courage, who'd stood up to bullies, reported harassment, and supported each other. In the center was a photo from that February day. Skylar Bennett in her torn uniform, standing tall, despite everything, surrounded by the girls who'd finally found their voices. The inscription below read, "True strength isn't about power over others. It's about empowering others to stand with you." Brett Garrison would never understand that. But thanks to one cheerleader who refused to be silenced, hundreds of students at Westbrook High now did. And that was a victory worth more than all the trophies in the world. The courtroom was packed on the day of sentencing. Skylar sat between her mother and her lawyer, her hands steady in her lap. Across the aisle, Brett Garrison looked smaller than she remembered. His orange jumpsuit, a far cry from his Letterman jacket. "Brett Michael Garrison," Judge Chen read, her voice echoing through the chamber. You have been found guilty of sexual assault, conspiracy to commit assault, and harassment. Do you have anything to say before sentencing? Brett stood, his lawyer's hand on his elbow. For a moment, Skylar thought he might actually apologize. Then he opened his mouth. I was set up, he said, his voice cracking. She ruined my life over a harmless prank. Mr. Garrison, Judge Chen interrupted coldly. I've reviewed the evidence, including videos of you stating your intent to put her in her place. This was no prank. This was a calculated attack meant to humiliate and harm a young woman who had the audacity to reject you. She shuffled her papers. You are hereby sentenced to 18 months in juvenile detention, 3 years probation, and mandatory counseling. You will register as a sex offender. Mr. Walsh and Mr. Reeves, please rise for your sentencing. Skylar didn't stay for the rest. She'd heard what she needed to hear. Justice, imperfect but real, had been served. Outside the courthouse, reporters clustered like hungry seagulls. But Skylar walked past them to where a different group waited. 23 girls from Westbrook and surrounding schools, all wearing matching t-shirts that read, "We are more than 17. How do you feel?" asked Rachel Martinez, one of the girls who'd come forward after seeing the news coverage. Like it's finally over, Skylar said, and like it's just beginning. They'd formed a support group that met every Thursday in the Westbrook High Library. What started as 17 had grown as more girls found the courage to share their stories. Some were recent victims. Others had been carrying their trauma for years. 3 weeks later, Skylar stood at a podium in the state capitol, testifying before the Education Committee about proposed legislation informally known as Skylar's Law that would require all schools to implement comprehensive harassment prevention programs and mandatory reporting protocols. For too long, she read from her prepared statement, though she barely needed to look at it anymore. Schools have prioritized their reputation and their star athletes over student safety. They've created cultures where victims are silenced and predators are protected. This has to stop. The committee voted unanimously to advance the bill, but the real moment of closure came on a quiet Tuesday afternoon in October. Skylar was packing up her dorm room at State University. She'd gotten a full scholarship, though not for cheerleading. Instead, it was for her essay on transforming trauma into change and her demonstrated leadership in advocacy. Through her window, she could see other students crossing the quad, laughing and carefree. Some of them probably had their own stories, their own moments of standing up or breaking down. But now they lived in a world where those stories were more likely to be heard, believed, and acted upon. Skylar's kick had sent Brett Garrison flying into a trophy case, but more importantly, it had sent shockwaves through a system that had protected predators for too long. One moment of refusing to be a victim had sparked a movement that changed lives across the state. Skylar smiled, turned off her phone, and got ready for bed. Tomorrow she had an exam, a student government meeting, and a date with Alex to try that new coffee shop. Normal college things. Beautiful, ordinary, safe things. She'd earned them, one kick at a time.